I locked my door, slept alone, woke up to an wolf woman was in my bed like she pays rent. Elias Cade never liked mornings. There was something too final about them. As if the night had been holding secrets it didn't want to reveal until the sun showed up and reminded him that he had to face another day. Usually he woke up alone, like everyone expected him to, in his tidy little apartment tucked into the upper levels of his megacity tower. His bed was neat, his room quiet, and the hum of the city below was the only sound he ever needed to wake up gently. But this morning something was different. Elias opened his eyes to the soft light spilling through the window, the faint pink of sunrise painting the room. He blinked, stretched, and turned to his side to grab his glasses, only to freeze mid-motion. The bed wasn't empty. A woman, or something like a woman, was lying beside him. At first he thought it was a hallucination, a trick of sleep. She had the shape of a human, but the details were wrong. Soft, pointed ears peeked from her dark hair, tipped with fur that shimmered in the morning light. Her eyes were the color of amber, almost glowing, and there was a calmness in her gaze that made his heart skip in confusion rather than fear. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't unfriendly either. She was just there. Elias froze, his mind racing through every possible explanation. A dream? Impossible, he was awake. Some kind of advanced hologram. He shook his head violently, as if shaking the sight away would make it vanish. Nothing happened. She remained as if she had always belonged there. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice smooth and melodic. There was a confidence in the way she spoke, like she had no doubts about being there. "You're awake later than usual today." Elias' mouth went dry. Who are you?" His voice was barely more than a whisper. "I'm Lyra," she said simply, rolling onto her side to face him fully. "I was just keeping you company." Keeping him company? Elias blinked, trying to process the words. His apartment door had been locked the night before. He always locked it. He always checked twice. His security drones would have alerted him immediately if someone had entered. He had nothing in his life that would explain why a wolf-eared woman, or whatever she was sleeping in his bed like she had a right to be there. Lyra," he repeated. "You, how, what?" Lyra didn't answer immediately. She yawned, stretched, and sat up casually, wrapping a soft blanket around her shoulders. "Relax, I've been here for a while. You usually don't notice me, but I thought today you might." Elias' mind was spinning. This wasn't possible. Nothing about this was possible. He got up from the bed slowly, trying to put some distance between them, and noticed that the room's details were unchanged. His clothes neatly folded on the chair, his desk clear, his laptop untouched. Nothing was out of place, and yet she was there. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the rising panic. Okay, let's start simple. How did you get in here?" Lyra tilted her head, considering him for a moment. "You don't need to worry about that. The door is locked, yes." "That's good. It means the system is working. I don't break things." Elias blinked. "You don't break things, then you just appeared?" "Yes," Lyra said. She smiled faintly, as if she were proud of herself for being honest. "I usually wait until morning. It's better that way." "Less startling. You're usually awake before I even have to touch the world outside your room." Elias ran a hand down his face. He had been awake for only a few minutes, but already the morning felt like a nightmare he couldn't wake from. "Why are you here? You don't even exist." "Nothing like you exists." Lyra's expression softened. "I exist enough for you to notice me. That's enough, isn't it?" Her calmness was maddening. He wanted to shout, to demand answers, but the words refused to come. Instead, he sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at her, trying to understand the impossible. She was there like it was completely normal. She wasn't hiding, she wasn't apologizing, and she certainly wasn't running away. "You can't just be here," Elias said finally. "I have routines, rules, systems. My door is locked, my apartment is monitored. Nothing can get in here without my knowledge. You shouldn't be here." Lyra's eyes flickered with something almost like amusement. "That's what you think. But rules are just patterns humans made to make the world predictable. I'm not bound by those patterns. I'm here and you're awake. That's all that matters." Elias shook his head, feeling a strange mix of fear and curiosity. "You know my name. You know things about me." "How?" Lyra tilted her head again. "Because I've been observing, quietly, gently. You never notice, do you?" "No," he admitted. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to force his brain to process the impossible. I would have noticed." "Something like this can't happen without notice. My life is too controlled," she shrugged. "Sometimes control isn't everything. Sometimes it's the moments you don't plan for that matter the most." Elias stared at her, trying to catch some hint of trickery or humor in her words. There was none. Lyra wasn't teasing. She wasn't playing games. She was just there. She moved with ease, sitting cross-legged on the bed, looking at him like he was a puzzle that could be solved if only he relaxed. "What do you want?" he asked cautiously. "If you're here, if you're real, what is it you want from me?" Lyra leaned back slightly, resting on her hands. "I don't want anything in the way humans usually want things. I'm not here to take or change. I'm here to be." Elias frowned. "To be? That doesn't make sense." "That's not, I don't even." "Exactly," she said softly. "It's not supposed to make sense. Sometimes life gives you things that don't make sense. You don't have to understand them immediately. You just have to notice." He blinked. Notice. He had noticed. More than noticed, he was aware, panicked, and utterly unable to act. This presence in his apartment, in his bed, was something he couldn't comprehend. He wanted to check his security logs, call the authorities, even shout at his drones to scan the apartment for intruders, but a small part of him hesitated. Something in the way she sat there, calm and unafraid, made him pause. Lyra seemed to notice the hesitation. "You're afraid," she said gently, "but not in the usual way. You're afraid because something exists that you weren't ready to notice. That's normal. Most humans don't notice until it's too late." Elias swallowed hard. "Too late for what?" She shrugged again, a simple motion that somehow carried weight. "You'll find out, but not yet. For now, just wake up. Just start the day. You don't have to understand everything immediately." He stared at her, his thoughts spinning. Normally, mornings meant coffee, emails, and planning his schedule. Now mornings meant trying to process the impossible. A wolf-eared woman in his bed, calm and inexplicable, claiming she belonged there. He couldn't scream, he couldn't flee, he could barely think. Yet, as irrational as it was, a tiny, almost imperceptible part of him, buried under the panic and confusion, wanted to stay. Not because he understood her or trusted her, but because she was different. In a life so calculated, so predictable, this was different. Elias exhaled slowly, trying to make sense of the swirling thoughts in his head. He glanced at her again. Lyra was looking out the window now, her ears twitching slightly at the city's hum. She didn't look threatening, she didn't look out of place. And yet she was impossibly out of place. He muttered to himself, half laughing, half groaning, "I can't be awake, I'm still dreaming. This is a dream." Lyra turned her head and smiled faintly, a warm, human gesture. "You're awake, Elias, and I'm here. That's all that matters right now. You'll figure the rest later." He blinked, and for the first time he considered that maybe he didn't have to figure it all immediately. Maybe, just maybe, he could survive the morning without solving the impossible. He didn't know what she was or why she was there, but she wasn't leaving. And somehow he realized that he didn't want her to, and that was how the day began. The world outside his apartment hummed with normalcy, oblivious to the impossible truth lying quietly in his bed. Elias didn't sleep well that night, though he wasn't sure if it had been sleep at all. His mind kept replaying the morning, replaying Lyra. The way she had sat calmly on his bed like she belonged there. The way her amber eyes had watched him, unafraid and unjudging. He kept expecting her to vanish when he blinked, or for his apartment door to beep and alert him that the security system had found an intruder. But the morning had been quiet, too quiet, and now he realized he was starting to accept it. By mid-morning, Elias had decided that ignoring the impossible wasn't going to work. He needed answers, but where could he start? Calling the authorities would only get him locked up or laughed at. There was no precedent for someone like Lyra. No explanation in any database, government record, or scientific paper. She simply existed, and that was terrifying. He found her in the kitchen, sipping coffee, or at least a liquid that smelled like coffee. He stared, unsure if he should say anything. She had made breakfast, pancakes with fruit perfectly arranged on a plate. He hadn't seen her cook, yet the smell filled the apartment. "You're staring," Lyra said lightly, her tail, a subtle thing but undeniably there, twitching behind her. "You should eat before you lose energy thinking." I don't know how to even begin," Elias admitted, finally moving to the counter. He poured himself a cup of coffee, tasting it as if it might dissolve the reality around him. It didn't. Lyra smiled faintly. "You don't have to understand right now, just live the day, that's enough for the moment." Elias shook his head, gripping his mug tightly. "I can't just live the day when there's a woman in my kitchen. Why are you here? Are you some experiment? Are you real?" "I'm as real as you allow yourself to see me," she said simply. She tilted her head, watching him carefully. Experiments are usually loud with alarms and questions. I'm quieter than that. He frowned. Quieter? You appeared in my bed. That's not quiet. Depends on perspective, she said. She picked up a fork and took a small bite of her breakfast. From your perspective, yes, it was loud, but from mine, it's just the usual morning. Elias groaned, feeling his head spin. He sat at the table, trying to sort through his thoughts. She moved with a strange, effortless grace, but she didn't seem to dominate the space. It was as if she belonged, though logic screamed she didn't. After a long silence, he asked, Lyra, do you know why you're here? I know as much as I need to, she said. Her voice was calm, patient. And that's enough for you to survive the morning. He stared at her, frustrated. That's not an answer, she shrugged. Sometimes survival doesn't require answers, it requires observation. Do you know what humans observe more than anything else? Elias hesitated. No, patterns, she said. You observe patterns. You create routines. You expect things to happen the same way every day. That's why I'm here, to remind you that not everything can be predicted. He laughed bitterly, running a hand over his face. Great, my life is controlled and now I have you. Something that can't be controlled. Lyra leaned forward slightly. And that's not bad. Change isn't always bad, Elias. Sometimes it's necessary. He froze at her use of his name again. It wasn't the first time she had said it, but it still felt intimate, almost invasive. How do you know my name? Because it matters, she said, as if that explained everything. I only interact with those whose lives I need to see. You see my life? He felt a shiver run down his spine. The logical part of him was screaming that this was impossible. No human, no machine, no combination of technology should be able to know him this well without his consent. And yet she did. Yes, Lyra said simply, I see it, but don't worry, I'm not here to change it unless you allow it. Elias swallowed hard. Why me? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she moved to the window, looking out at the city stretching for miles. The sun glinted off the mirrored surfaces of the buildings, and the streets below were alive with the usual buzz of early morning commuters. Why any human? She said finally. Because someone has to understand before the rest of the world can. What do you mean, understand? Lyra turned to him, her expression calm and certain. Humans are at a turning point. You don't know it yet, but the world is shifting. People are learning new things about themselves and the universe faster than ever. Most of you are not ready for it. You might be. He blinked, unsure if she was speaking metaphorically or literally. You mean like first contact, or aliens, or some technological leap? Lyra's amber eyes glimmered. Something like that, but not exactly. It's closer to self-awareness, accelerated. Humans are about to see what they can become, and I'm here to observe how you respond. How you handle the unknown, the impossible, the extraordinary. Elias leaned back, trying to process the words. So I'm a test. Not exactly, Lyra said. She tilted her head. Tests are judged. This isn't judged. It's observed. It's measured. The world doesn't change because you pass or fail. It changes because you choose, because you respond. He stared at her, feeling a strange mix of fear, awe, and disbelief. This was beyond anything he had imagined possible. And yet the calm in her voice, the strange comfort in her presence made him pause. Maybe this wasn't meant to be frightening. Maybe it was something else entirely. You don't need to understand it all right now, Lyra said. Start the day, watch, learn, notice. That's all I ask. He ran a hand down his face, trying to steady himself. Notice what? You, my life, the city? All of it, she said. Everything. Humans see patterns, but they miss the details. That's why I'm here. You're missing details. He stared at her, a part of him wanting to scream, to demand clarity, to demand answers. But another part, the part that was tired of control, tired of predictability, tired of patterns, wanted to simply watch, to see what this impossible thing might reveal. He made a decision. For now, he would survive the day. He would interact with her, observe, and try to learn. That was all he could do. The day moved slowly. They went through the motions of a normal morning, with Elias trying to act as if nothing was unusual, though every glance at Lyra reminded him how impossible she was. She made small comments about his habits, how he poured coffee, how he checked messages, how he folded his shirts. It was unnerving. She knew his life better than he did, but she never judged. By mid-morning, Elias decided he had to test her. Okay, he said cautiously. If you're real, then prove it. Do something impossible, something I can't explain with logic. Lyra raised an eyebrow. Impossible, she asked. You humans use that word too loosely. Watch, and I'll show you. She moved to the corner of the room and reached out her hand. The morning sunlight hit it, and for a brief moment, the shadows in the room shifted unnaturally. Elias blinked, and when he looked again, the shadows were gone, but the feeling of the room being slightly off lingered. "What was that?" he asked, his voice trembling. "That was a reminder," she said lightly. "That reality is not as rigid as you think, that there are things beyond your control, that noticing them is the first step toward understanding." Elias sank back into his chair, feeling both relieved and terrified. She hadn't harmed him, hadn't done anything threatening, yet the impossibility of her presence filled the room like a weight. Hours passed. Elias tried to continue with his normal work, emails, messages, system checks, but his focus kept drifting. Every sound, every movement, every shadow made him think of her, and she noticed. She didn't mock or tease, she simply observed, offering small guidance, subtle comments, and gentle questions. By evening, Elias realized something strange. He hadn't asked her to stay, he hadn't invited her, yet he wanted her too. Not because he understood her, not because he trusted her completely, but because she brought a strange sense of life into the monotony of his controlled existence. When night fell and the city lights flickered to life below, Lyra finally spoke again. "You're tired," she said softly. "Tomorrow we'll do more, we'll see more. You'll begin to understand what you're part of even if you don't know it yet." Elias nodded slowly. "I guess I'm ready," he said, though part of him didn't know if he truly was. Lyra smiled faintly, settling down on the bed as the city's hum surrounded them. "That's enough for now. Sleep, dream, notice when you wake." Elias lay down beside her, his mind racing, yet feeling strangely calm. He didn't understand any of it, her existence, her purpose, or what the world was about to become. But for the first time in years, he felt awake, and that was enough. Elias woke slowly the next morning. The city outside was already alive with the hum of hovercars, the occasional distant siren, and the chatter of pedestrians far below in the streets. But inside his apartment, the quiet was different. Lyra was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the edge of the bed, her amber eyes reflecting the soft light from the window. "Morning," she said calmly, as if nothing extraordinary had happened in the last 24 hours. "Morning," Elias muttered, rubbing his eyes. He still felt disoriented, unsure where reality ended and impossibility began. Every time he blinked, he half expected her to vanish, but she never did. "Today," Lyra said, "we start understanding." "Understanding what?" Elias asked, though part of him already suspected the answer would be complicated. "Everything," she said, standing and walking to the window. Her ears twitched slightly as she scanned the city. "Humans call it many things: progress, change, evolution. I call it observation. You've lived your life in patterns, in routines, that's safe. But patterns are limited. Humans are about to discover what lies beyond them." Elias sat up, intrigued despite himself. "Beyond patterns?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, beyond comfort. Beyond predictability, beyond the things you think define your reality." He frowned. "You're talking in riddles." "I am not," she said, her tone patient but firm. "I am talking about the truth. Humanity has reached a point where your choices, your awareness, and even your emotions shape the future in ways you cannot imagine. I'm here to help you notice. Nothing more, nothing less." Elias felt a chill run through him. The words were simple, but their meaning was enormous. She wasn't some visitor or intruder. She was something more, something beyond human. "I don't understand," he admitted. "Why me? Why my apartment? Why now?" Lyra smiled faintly. "Because you are representative. You are neither the strongest nor the smartest. You are average in all ways that matter, and that makes you perfect. To see humanity, one must observe an average human, someone who reflects the whole species in small, quiet ways." "Representative," Elias repeated, his mind spinning. "You're saying I'm like a sample." "Not a sample," she corrected. "An observer and also the observed. The world is changing, Elias, and your life, your small, ordinary life, is part of that change. How you respond to what is impossible, how you adapt, will be measured. That is all." He sank back into the bed, feeling both terrified and strangely honored. "Measured? By who?" Lyra's eyes softened. "By the universe in its way, not by judgment, not by punishment. Just observation. Humans are at a threshold, and your reactions are part of the bridge between what is and what can be." Elias rubbed his face, trying to calm the storm in his mind. It was one thing to wake up with a wolf-eared woman in his apartment. It was another to be told that his reactions could influence the fate of humanity, or at least be part of something that huge. "Okay," he said finally. Then show me what this bridge is. Lyra nodded. We start with noticing, watch closely. Everything is connected, but humans rarely see the threads that tie it together. The day passed differently than any Elias had ever experienced. He walked through the city with her silently beside him, though no one seemed to notice her. It wasn't that she was invisible, she simply didn't behave like a human in a way that drew attention. Her movements were fluid, natural, and precise, but unlike humans, she never rushed, never stumbled, never looked uncertain. She noticed things he didn't, subtle shifts in crowd movement, patterns in advertisements, even the quiet hum of energy from the power grids. Why do you notice these things? Elias asked as they paused in a park overlooking the city. Children ran along paths below, their laughter echoing against the mirrored buildings. Because noticing is understanding, she said. Humans often see, but they do not notice. Seeing is passive, noticing is active. It changes the mind, and sometimes it changes reality itself. He looked at her, unsure if she was speaking figuratively or literally. You mean what I notice can change reality? Not by magic, she said softly, but by awareness. Humanity is at a point where consciousness matters more than machinery. Your reactions, your choices, your care for the small and overlooked, all of it matters. It shapes the world. Elias felt a weight settle on him. He had never considered that his ordinary life could matter in such a vast way. His routines, his careful patterns, even his small daily choices, they were part of a larger system, one he had not even realized existed. Is that why you're here? He asked, a mix of fear and curiosity threading his voice. To teach me? Lyra shook her head. Not teach. Observe, guide. Sometimes a word, sometimes a pause, sometimes nothing at all. Humans often learn too much when taught directly. Observation allows for understanding on a deeper level. They continued walking, and Elias tried to focus on the small details she pointed out. The way the sunlight glinted off the metal surfaces, the rhythm of footsteps in the distance, even the subtle changes in air pressure that he never noticed before. Each observation was simple, but together they formed a tapestry of reality he had never seen. By evening, they returned to his apartment. Elias felt exhausted, but not in the usual way. His mind was buzzing with insights, patterns, and questions. Lyra prepared dinner, moving with the same quiet grace she had all day. She didn't speak much, simply worked, letting him absorb what he had seen. Elias noticed things he never had before, the way the refrigerator light reflected off the counter, the gentle hum of his air filter, the subtle sounds of the building settling. It was mundane, yet extraordinary. After dinner, Elias sat on the couch, staring at Lyra. I think I understand a little, he admitted. You're showing me that there's more to notice in life, that even small things matter, she nodded. Yes, that is the beginning. Humans rarely see beyond their routines. Noticing opens the door to possibility. And possibility leads to change. He leaned back, considering her words. He didn't fully understand what she meant by change or how noticing could truly shape reality, but he felt the truth in it. For the first time, he realized that life could be bigger than the patterns he had relied on for years. Lyra, he said quietly, do you ever get tired of observing? She looked at him, her amber eyes thoughtful. Not in the way you think. Observation is not tiring. It is living fully without distraction. Humans live partially, focused on one thing at a time. I see the whole, and that gives me clarity, not fatigue. He nodded slowly. It was strange to hear someone describe life so differently, yet her words resonated. Somehow in her calm presence, he felt less alone. Not in a conventional sense. He was still bewildered, still unsure, but connected in a way he had never felt before. Hours passed in quiet conversation, not about her origins or his future, but about small details. The patterns of clouds in the sky, the hum of machines in the city, the rhythm of people's footsteps on the streets below. Each detail was simple, yet he began to see them as threads in a larger design. When night fell, Elias prepared for bed, still uneasy but calmer than the first few days. Lyra settled beside him, as she always did, her presence gentle and reassuring. You've noticed much today, she said softly. Tomorrow we will go further. You will begin to see the hidden threads that connect not just your life, but the lives of everyone around you. That is when understanding begins in earnest. He nodded, lying back against the pillow. The thought of seeing the threads of the world was terrifying, but he felt a strange excitement as well. His ordinary life was no longer ordinary. It was part of something larger, something extraordinary, and he was at the center, not by choice, but because of it. Lyra watched him for a moment, her ears flicking slightly. You are ready to see what humans have not yet seen, but first, sleep, dream, notice the small things and carry them into tomorrow. Elias closed his eyes, feeling the weight of her presence beside him. He didn't understand everything, but he felt awake in a way he never had before. The impossible was no longer frightening. It was a doorway, and he had stepped through it. Outside, the city hummed with life, oblivious to the quiet transformation taking place in one small apartment. Inside, Elias and Lyra rested, preparing for a day that would challenge everything he thought he knew about reality. And somewhere in the quiet of the night, Elias realized that he had begun to change, not because he wanted to, but because he had no choice. The world, the city, and the threads of life around him had begun to whisper truths he could no longer ignore. The next morning, Elias woke to the soft sound of rain tapping against his window. The city outside was gray and quiet, wrapped in the gentle hum of early morning showers. He sat up slowly, stretching, and noticed Lyra already awake, standing by the window. Her amber eyes seemed to glow softly in the dim light, reflecting the clouds above. "Morning," she said simply, without turning. "Morning," Elias muttered, still tired, still trying to adjust to the strange rhythm of his life now. Every day with Lyra felt like stepping into a new reality. Nothing was ordinary anymore. Every detail, every shadow, every sound seemed connected, meaningful, and full of hidden significance. Lyra finally turned to him, her expression calm but serious. "Today," she said, "you will understand why I am here." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Finally?" he asked, a mixture of hope and apprehension in his voice. "Not everything at once," she replied. "Understanding comes in pieces like threads of a tapestry. You can only see the whole picture when the threads are connected." He frowned. "Threads? What threads?" Lyra walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. "Threads of connection, Elias. Every action, every choice, every thought a human has, it leaves a trace. Most humans cannot see them, but they exist. And these traces affect not just themselves, but the world around them. I'm here to help you notice those threads, to see the way your life touches others, even in ways you do not realize." Elias thought about it. It sounded almost poetic, but he wanted to ground it in reality. "So, you're saying my life, what I do, what I notice, it matters?" "Yes," she said. "More than you know. Humanity is at a turning point, Elias. You may not see it yet, but you are part of something larger. Something that will shape the future of your species." Elias' heart raced. The weight of her words was enormous. He had always thought his life was small, ordinary, and insignificant. Now it seemed that even his smallest actions could have meaning far beyond what he could imagine. "How?" he asked quietly. "How can one person, one ordinary life, have any effect on the world?" Lyra's expression softened. "Because humans are connected, even when they do not know it. Every choice you make, every interaction you have, sends ripples through the network of life. Some humans ignore these ripples, others do not. Those who notice, those who act with awareness, they shape what comes next." Elias swallowed hard. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. He had always lived carefully but cautiously, keeping his routines precise, avoiding mistakes. But now he realized that living cautiously was not enough. He had to observe, notice, and choose with intention. Lyra stood and walked to the window, her ears twitching at the sound of distant thunder. "Today," she said, "we begin the next step. Observation alone is not enough. You must begin to understand the consequences of your choices. You must see how your actions influence the world, even when you do not intend them to." Elias nodded slowly, unsure of how to begin, but willing to try. They left the apartment and walked through the city. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening. People moved quickly, umbrellas in hand, unaware of the lessons unfolding around them. Lyra pointed out small details: a man dropping a package and a child noticing it, a street performer adjusting his routine to the crowd's reactions, the way a single traffic light's timing affected the flow of pedestrians. "Every action matters," she said, "even the smallest one. Every human leaves an imprint. Most do not realize it, but it is true. And noticing those imprints, that is the first step toward understanding." Elias tried to pay attention. He watched the way people moved, the way small decisions affected the larger flow of the city. He began to see patterns, connections, and subtle influences he had never noticed before. It was overwhelming, but also fascinating. As the day passed, Lyra guided him through a series of observations, each one building on the last. She showed him how a single conversation could change someone's mood, how a kind gesture could ripple through a community, how a moment of attention could alter the course of someone's day. By evening, Elias was exhausted, but his mind was alive in a way it had never been before. He understood in a small way the responsibility he carried simply by existing. Every choice, every thought, every interaction mattered. Back in his apartment, Elias sat quietly, processing the lessons of the day. Lyra moved around the room preparing dinner, but she did not speak much. She let him absorb the weight of understanding in silence. Finally, Elias spoke. Lyra, I think I'm beginning to understand. You're showing me that my life, every small thing I do, it can influence others. And that influence, it's not just local, it can spread farther than I can see. She nodded. Exactly, you are beginning to see the threads. Each human is a thread, and together they weave the fabric of the future. Not all threads are noticed, but they exist nonetheless. Those who notice, who act with awareness, help shape the fabric in ways that are meaningful. Elias leaned back, feeling a mix of awe and fear. The responsibility was enormous, but he also felt a strange sense of purpose he had never experienced before. Why me? He asked again. Why my life? There are billions of humans. Why choose me? Lyra's eyes softened. Because you are ordinary in ways that matter. You are neither the strongest nor the smartest. You are not remarkable in ways that draw attention. And that is precisely why your choices reflect the potential of your species. To see humanity, one must observe the ordinary, not the exceptional. You represent what humans can become if they notice, if they act with awareness, if they embrace their potential. Elias felt the weight of her words settle on him. He had never thought of himself as important, and yet now he realized that his ordinary life had extraordinary significance. You mean I can't just live for myself anymore? He asked. No, Lyra said gently. You live for yourself, but also for the connections you create, for the people you touch, knowingly or unknowingly, for the ripples you send into the world. That is the next step, understanding that your life is not isolated, that your choices echo beyond your perception. He sat in silence, absorbing the enormity of what she was saying. It was a lot to take in, and he felt the pressure of responsibility settle on his shoulders. But he also felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time, he realized that life was not just about following routines, avoiding mistakes, or staying safe. Life was about noticing, acting, and embracing the consequences of every choice. Lyra prepared a simple dinner, but Elias barely noticed. His mind was alive with the lessons of the day. He thought about the people he had observed, the small choices he had seen ripple outward, and the ways his own actions could influence others. After dinner, he sat by the window, looking out at the city below. The streets were alive with movement, and he began to see patterns he had never noticed before. The way the rain had changed the reflections on the pavement, the way people moved differently after a brief conversation, the subtle connections between events he had once considered. Random. Lyra joined him, sitting quietly beside him. You are ready for the next step, she said softly. Tomorrow you will begin to act intentionally to shape the threads you have noticed. Observation alone is not enough. Understanding requires action. You must choose, Elias. You must decide how to influence the world around you. Elias nodded slowly, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. The idea of acting intentionally, of shaping the world in ways he had never considered, was both terrifying and exhilarating. But he also felt a strange sense of readiness. He had seen the threads, he had noticed the connections, and now he understood that he could influence them. Tomorrow, he said quietly, I will try, I will act, I will notice and choose. Lyra smiled faintly, her ears twitching in satisfaction. That is all I ask. You do not need to understand everything yet. You only need to act with awareness. The world will respond and the threads will reveal themselves. You are part of something larger, Elias. Something beyond ordinary human understanding. And you are ready. As the night deepened, Elias lay in bed, reflecting on the lessons of the day. He felt a sense of purpose he had never known, a connection to the world around him that was both humbling and empowering. Lyra's presence was no longer just mysterious. It was guiding, shaping, and awakening something inside him. He realized that he was no longer living in a simple, ordinary life. Every choice, every observation, every interaction mattered. And he was ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. to embrace the responsibility of noticing, acting, and shaping the threads of the world.